born in Wilmington, pretty much grew up in that area, lived on Naaman's Road for a while, lived in a boarding house for a while. My father worked for DuPont's during World War II. Fortunately, the bus came right by the house and let him off and picked him up. But then we finally moved into Wilmington, lived in an apartment about 2 blocks from the DuPont building. So it was easy for him to walk to work, but there wasn't much of a playground there. So Rodney Square kind of became my playground, and then of course there was Woolworths and Grants and Kresge's, and wandered in and out of all the time and just snooping around, seeing what kind of trouble I didn't need to get into. Actually, I found out about the school when my father brought me up here. I can't remember if he said we were going for an interview or whatever, but downstairs where the colonel's office was at that time, my father had an interview which was probably more extensive than mine. My interview was the colonel. He was had gained a little weight, a little bit. Reached, and he's in his clerical collar, and he reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a coin, and he handed it to me and said, "How many of these go into $1? Make up $1?" And I looked at it and turned over, and I'm not sure I knew about Roman numerals then or not, but it had a Roman numeral 3 there, and I saw that. I thought, well, 3, and I said 33 as an answer. Well, apparently I was close enough. Back in those days, it started out with 6-man football by weight, and then they had 11-man football. When I was a freshman, I was still light enough to play 6-man football, and then next year I played 11-man. That was the last year they had 11-man football, and the fullback on the team was expelled, and I had always played in, and Mr. Wilkins was the coach, and I said, "Sir, can I play fullback?" So at about 95 pounds or whatever it was, I was playing fullback. So you already have the essentials. It was discipline and work. Through life, I've finally found if you're willing to work hard, you will be recognized for your efforts. And that is really the most basic part of getting ahead in life. That you can find all kind of employers, but they don't give away paychecks. They want people to earn them. And that's one thing we learned. You know, we learn to work. We learn to finish, not only start jobs, but finish them.
So now,
I've been accepted to the University of Delaware in the ag school because I didn't know what else to apply for. And I wasn't at the top of my class, and I went there a year, and then I joined Marine Corps. That was 1954, and I did a 3-year tour in the Marine Corps, got out, went back to the University of Delaware. I was the same kind of student I was before, and I had an opportunity to get accepted for a program that the Air Force was running that would lead to a commission, and that's what I got in. After a year of training and everything, I was commissioned a 2nd lieutenant. I arrived on the station by myself. Usually people arrived as crews, they trained as crews. I arrived by myself, and I ended up replacing a guy on a crew who had less than desirable characters to be an officer. Anyway, so, and we became a good crew and worked our way up as a crew. I made captain early, became an instructor in my position, and ended up as what they called wing EWO, EWO being electronic warfare officer, which was a position on the aircraft. And that was the top position in that slot, this wing. And so I meant I worked with the big guys and had an office and all that kind of stuff. And one day, we called them Twixes. It was an electronic message that came in, like it came in through the communications center and everything else. And I got this Twix, and it was to me, and it says, report to this motel in Long Beach, California on such and such a date. If you have any questions, I gave it a telephone number out at Nellis Air Force Base. And I'd been on station about 5 years, maybe a little longer. And I thought, well, you know, what do I have to lose? So I called. And a guy by the name of Jack Donovan answered the phone, and the first thing he said was, "Are you a volunteer?" And I said, "No, but I've been on station almost about 5 years. It's time for me to try something new." He took that as a yes. So this was a new program, a highly classified program. It was from unbudgeted money. It was a program that was in transition and also a learning process. We ended up being part of the learning process. And showed up to California, went to the motel, and the guy behind the desk says, "Here's the key to the hospitality room, here's the key to the rental car, here's the key to your room." I said, "Fine," you know. And I planned, I got out there a couple days early. I thought, well, I'll just goof off a little bit. But over the weekend, there were 15 other people showed up. And that made up 8 what we would call crews. Pilot in the front, 2-seat aircraft, pilot in the front, EWO in the back. And when I checked in, the guy said, "Mr. I can't even remember the guy's name, Mr. So-and-so will meet you here in the lobby at 8 o'clock Monday morning." So, okay. So we all showed up there, and he introduced himself and said, "You get in your cars and follow me." And we went, and we were in Long Beach, California, the airfield, and we were over on the civilian side, an old beat up hangar. There was a B-17 and a PBY out on the other side of a chain link fence, dripping oil. And the only thing that made it different was it was fenced off, and there was a guard shack with the civilian security on it. And he checked everybody in, we had badges and all that kind of stuff. And then we went into this hangar, and inside the hangar was a bunch of bolt together trailers like they use for business and stuff. I mean, the air conditioned and everything else. Well, inside there was a big computer also. And it was a computer they had used on the B-70, development of this B-70 program. And that's when we found out what our mission was. The program was called Wild Weasel. That was the code name for it, Wild Weasel. We got in country on the 4th of July and shot down the 7th of August. It was part of the learning curve that they need to revisit their tactics. Most wars, tactics of most wars based on the last war, which aren't valid anymore. So our tactics were go low, go fast. Well, they weren't having very much success with that. And somebody finally figured out that the F-105 could outfly the missile. And it took some nerve. You would go in at a high altitude, wait for the missile to be fired, and the guy in the back, his job was to kind of locate the missile and keep up with the electronic portion of the scenario. And I could tell when the missile was fired. Well, the pilot would either put the missile at his 10 o'clock or his 2 o'clock. And you wait till the last second and you turn into it. And the missile's always leading you. And it's going to where you're going to get to. Well, when you do that, it can't keep up with the G's, the inertial force. So it starts tumbling. And after that, they had a lot more success. I got shot down, and we ejected from an aircraft, which is hard on the body anyway. And fortunately, everything worked automatically like it was supposed to. And the chute deployed, and the procedure is look up and see, make your chutes fully deployed, and there's not any problems with it. And I did. When I did, I would get dizzy. So then I looked down. I remember 3 or 4 times I looked up and I got dizzy every time. And the next thing, I was on the knoll of a hill, sitting just kind of like this on this knoll of the hill, and there was a Vietnamese woman and a militiaman with a big rifle coming up the hill at me. And part of the story is that morning at our briefing before we took off, the intelligence brief told us that if you get shot down north of the Red River, we're not sending anybody to come pick you up. They were losing more people than they were picking up, so it just, the odds weren't there. So I got captured. The first thing they took was my watch. The second thing was our survival weapon. Then they stripped me down to just my skivvies, my underwear, no shoes, no socks or anything. Tied a rope around my neck and kind of make a leash, and carted me off to a kind of a collection point. And what I ask people many times, take yourself and strip yourself of everything. You have nothing. You don't even have clothes or shoes on your feet. How do you get by from one day to another? What gives you the strength to get by one day to another? And in my mind, the answer is faith. That's, faith in yourself, faith in God, faith in country. Otherwise, what do you do? I mean, the only other option is to give up, and that's not one of the options, really. And we were all professional military people. We were indoctrinated. The battle doesn't stop just because you got shot down and were captured. The battle continues. It's just a different kind of battle. It's a battle of the mind, and in a lot of cases, a physical battle because of the torture. The Lord's Prayer was, you find certain, and everybody's different. They'll clutch at different things, and it just depends upon the situation, how much stress you're under, and what your mind reaches out to. And there was a period where, well, Lord, give me one more day, And the whole 6.5 years was almost in a state of flux. It wasn't always the same. Sometimes you were solo, might be with 2 or 3. One time I was in a group of 19, I think. Then finally, after the Sante raid 1970, the Vietnamese panicked and brought us all into Hanoi and put us in the old French prison, which had cells, and we were elbow to elbow and we put about 50 people in it. Discipline, there's all kinds of discipline. Discipline doesn't mean giving a spanking or a slap on the wrist. It's learning to discipline your mind and discipline your actions. One fortunate thing was with all the prisoners in North Vietnam, one time we took a poll kind of clandestinely. The average age was 35. Almost all of them were college graduates. But they had been in the service long enough, I'll use the word get indoctrinated, but also believe in the cause, so to speak. We had what was called, it's still around in a slightly different form, called the Code of Conduct. There were just 6 articles to it. And the first one, what started out is, I am an American fighting man. So you remember that. You don't have to remember the whole thing, but you got the most basic part. When we were released, in increments, and when I was released, your first stop was in the Philippines, at Clark Air Force Base. And one of the things they did was they gave everybody an opportunity to call home, call their family. Well, I was married about shortly before I went over, and they gave me a number I called, nobody answered, so I never talked to anybody. And then we went from there to Hickam in the Philippines, refueled and everything. And then from there, we went to Travis in California. And we got off the airplane. And I came down the stairs and started out. And my wife ran up and jumped. You could describe it better than I can. Jumped into it. And that's the first time I was surprised, but I thought I was just getting off the airplane because I hadn't talked to her or anything else. So. And one day, but hadn't been back very long, 2-3 days or something like that. And she said, I can't go on like this. Well, most of the guys went to school when they came back, military professional school. And I had orders to go in Montgomery, Alabama. And I thought, I'm tired of sitting on my butt. And so I ended up having those canceled and ended up in Southwest Oklahoma.
Okay.
Work program served a purpose when it's here. Well, then the child labor laws got involved, the state got involved, so that fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
But what I notice now is how active in community affairs the student body is. So that replaced the work program. But in addition to which, the student body, when they graduate and get out into the real world, they're more likely to continue contributing to civic activities and things like that, which is a good plus and a good trade-off.
Absolutely.
After being up here, going to chapel, didn't interact with the students that much, but interacted enough to know that probably we're fortunate to have that mix that we do, or that you do. Because all these students will go out into the world and they will have already interacted with boys of other races, different nationalities, different skin color, and they will have overcome a lot of the prejudices that hold back progress.